Hi, this is Justin from the Methodist School of Music, and thank you for coming down to watch this video. Over the course of 2 nights, I conducted a webinar series entitled Production 101, Audio and Video Editing for Beginners. Night 1 was audio editing, and Night 2 was video editing. As the videos are quite long, I have included timestamps in the description box to help you navigate the various sections of the videos so that if you need the most help with a particular section, you can just jump right to that. If you have any questions, I encourage you to put them in the comment box below so that everyone can benefit from having a discussion about a technical issue that you may have. Who knows, you might have the same issue that everyone else is experiencing. If you do feel that you still need to send a private email, do write to the address below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If you do like what you see, do consider subscribing and hitting that bell notification button so that when new content comes out, it will come straight to you. It will really help us out. Do also consider following our Facebook page where we will be putting out notices and you'll be up to date as to when our new webinars will be coming out so that you can be a part of all this teaching. So grab that favorite cup of coffee and sit down and let's get started with the learning. Gracious and Heavenly Father, this evening there will be many technical terms. This evening there will be many things that are new to people. So I pray for every one of my brothers and sisters here. Everyone who is here, I pray for wisdom. I pray for an increase of our capacity to understand these things. And I pray also for myself that whatever I speak today will be from your mind and will be from your creative heart so that we all can be empowered, encouraged to serve you with the gifts that you've given to us, dear Lord. This we ask, in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Tonight's plan, we are going to talk about an introduction to audio. So I need to explain some key concepts. And these concepts will apply not just to you as the creative person who is mixing the audio, who is going to be the... so tonight we're going to put on the hat of the engineer, the recording engineer. And as the recording engineer, you need to know certain terms, certain lingo. It's like how, if you're a lawyer, you need to know legalese or the legal terms. If you're a musician, you need to know the music theory, music terms. Audio technology is the same thing. There are terms and there are concepts that you need to understand in order to get a working knowledge to work with audio technology stuff. So I'm going to explain key concepts, and then we're going to do basic mixing techniques, which I will do a live demo. And I've tried to time myself. I won't overrun again, but I am going to basically run through how to build a track kind of from the ground up. And if time permits, I'm going to show 2 variations. I'm going to show a single voice, single guitar situation, and then I'm going to show a full band situation. Now, if you can understand the single guitar, single singer kind of situation, you can apply the same concept to the full band. In other words, you can scale up your knowledge. It will apply whether you're dealing with one singer, one guitar, or whether you're dealing with an 8-piece, 9-piece band. Let's go into the introduction. Now, if you have attended my previous webinar last week, you would have remembered that I went through a creative process and like a 4-step process as to how to get a worship video done. The creative process for the recording engineer is similar. So there is the arrangement where the worship leader, the music director, and the recording engineer should be in conversation with one another. Let me tell you this, the foundation of any project, any creative endeavor, any kind, anything that you want to do creatively, the foundation is communication. You need to be in tight communication with whoever is involved with the project. So there are 3 phases in a creative process for the recording engineer. There's the arranging section. So this is before the musicians are given the score. This is before the you send out, this is before the musicians press record on their devices. This is when you should be meeting up at like the leadership level. The worship leader, music director, engineer should be meeting together, and they need to settle how the song goes. Remember, you're recording a song. It's going to be very different. As I said in the previous webinar, it's a different environment from the live worship experience. Live worship, the worship leader and musician can call for another chorus, can call for another bridge, can repeat the tag how many times, and you can do that spontaneously. In a recorded environment, everything is set from point A to point B. Every part of the journey needs to be set in stone. Now, the engineer's job is to understand what the worship leader and the music director want to achieve. The engineer needs to know that how long is the song going to be. Well, that's the basic knowledge. How long is it going to be? Is it a 3-minute project? Is it a 6-minute project? He needs to know who's involved, the instruments involved, the vocalists involved. If it's SATB, how many of each of the SATB do we have? And if you have insufficient people, can you tweak the arrangement? Will an arrangement work if there's less than ideal number of people, for example? And then once all this is set, ideally there should be, in an ideal world, you have 3 different people: the worship leader, the MD, and the engineer. But as it is with most of life, we have to double up, triple up sometimes. In my church, in American Methodist, I play all 3 at the same time. I'm normally the one who, maybe the MD engineer. I don't have control over the songs on Sunday, but I'm given the song list. And in this period of time, we are given 2 songs to record every week. And as the engineer and the MD, I have control over how I want the song to sound. And I also, because I know how the song sounds, I can plan out in my head technically what needs to be done. How many tracks do I need to be recorded? How many instruments, where do I need them to be on like the stereo field in my head, Then when all this is done, you have to wait for the singers and musicians to get back to you with their recorded files. So in the previous webinar, I mentioned that singers can use their phones, and they can use their phones to record video, which will also embed the audio information in the video. So there is a process to extract audio from the video file, and then there's also the process of having to deal with these files. How do you all audio files will have noise, so how do you denoise the file? How do you treat the file to make it ready for mixing and editing? And of course, the last step, which is going to be the most technical step, is working with these audio files. It's not enough that you have, you have access to audio files, great, but how do you make these files, turn all these different files into a cohesive song? So there's a marriage of both art and science when it comes to recording technology. And I'll be honest, I'm coming from the perspective of one who is quite literally one step ahead of you. I'm not a professional recording engineer. I'm not a professional. I don't have a degree in music production like this, but this is something that I've gained over the years as someone who has worked as a session musician before full-time ministry. I used to work I used to gig as a semi-professionally as a musician, and I used to go to studios to record. So I know a little bit about this process because of my experiences here. My encouragement to you is that if I can understand it, you all certainly can. It's just that you will take time. All in all, I've been in this around 20 years. So for perspective, so 20, there's a 20-year runway that I've had between when I first started and right now. So, and I'm sure you guys are 2 or 3 times smarter than me. So maybe instead of 20 years, you'll get it in 20 weeks. Our task in audio production is to help your worship team shine, which means that the audio engineer is taking the role of a background person. So you want to serve whoever has submitted the recordings by making them sound good, So that means having to treat each submission equally, So everyone has put in time and effort to record. Everyone has put in has sacrificed time away from the family, time away from work to get this done. So let us treat each file and each submission with respect, and also with the intent of making them sound good, to make them sound their best. While the task is to make them shine, the goal is to have participation and not perfection. So we want to be as inclusive as possible. as I shared in my previous webinar, we want to do, the goal of worship video and the goal of all these creative endeavors is to increase human connection. If you can see one more face on the screen, if you can hear one more voice from the song, that's one more potential human connection that can be strengthened. And in this time of disconnection, this is the one thing that we want to emphasize as a church. But that being said, the line demarcating perfectionism and distraction depends on your church. I say this because there are churches where the congregation is used to a certain technical standard. And if you, and of course, it varies from church to church. I'm not saying that churches, I'm not saying that congregation members are nasty people. Wow, these guys demand radio standard. But I'm saying that you cannot expect your musicians and your singers to be perfect, because they're not professional musicians. This is not their job. This is not what they're paid to do. But that means that when you come to the editing stage, right, there'll be a very big temptation for you to try and edit everything as perfectly as possible, to have every phrase in time, to auto-tune the guys' voices until it sounds like a radio song. Where do you draw that line? That's up to your church to decide. I submit to you that churches, the line for churches shouldn't be that far ahead. It shouldn't be right up there with radio. I think churches are quite gracious. They understand that perfection is not the standard, and it's possible to not get radio ready songs. And you can hear this, right? Sometimes when you talk to your church members, they'll say stuff like, when you ask them, hey, how do you find the sound from the church band this morning? They'll say stuff like, oh, I didn't know that the bass guitar was playing, or it doesn't matter if the bass guitar plays what. Sorry to all the bass players out there if I offended you, but the general consensus is, at least in my experience, to the average person, they cannot tell whether the guitar is playing or not. They can't tell whether the guitarist was rushing by 33% or dragging by 33% off the beat. They can't tell if the worship leader Gabrat, like instead of signaling a chorus, he signaled a bridge, and then he very shakily sang into the bridge. Maybe that they can pick those very big kind of mistakes up, but by and large, we're not dealing with perfection. We want participation. So that line, it's up to your church, and have a serious conversation with your leaders. If there are leaders out there in the, let's say, the worship ministry department, but the worship ministry, the leadership level, if they want to have radio ready, Grammy award winning songs, this is not the place to do it. We want to have, this is not the place to have, we're not going to win Grammys with our music here. That's what I'm saying. So manage the expectations of your church, manage your expectations. You might be tempted to edit so much, maybe you don't have time at all. By the time I have access to the files, by the time I get people to submit the files, by the time I get to the editing stage, I only have maybe half a day to get the songs, to mix the song and get it out. And half a day is not enough to have a Grammy Award winning radio song. Some key concepts that you need to understand. And this is something that I'm going to define for you two terms that everyone on your team, you and your worship team, need to understand if you're recording and you're handling a project together. Two things, sample rate and bit depth, okay? So let's start from the very beginning. Let's start with what is audio. And if you remember your Sec 2 physics, or your Sec 3 physics, this is the picture of a sine wave. And what is a sine wave? Well, you've got it's represented by the XY axis. The X axis is time, so as time goes on. The Y axis is amplitude. So the wave, this is a waveform that is increasing and decreasing in amplitude. And in amplitude, you perceive the tone and timbre of a sound by its wave shape, and you perceive the volume of a sound by its amplitude. So if these waves, if the sine wave was like, if those peaks were shorter that means that the sound is softer. If those waves were, if it's a smooth wave like that, that's a certain sound. If it's a hard square wave like that, that's a certain sound as well. In general, the smoother the wave is, the smoother the sound, and the more square or more, the more right angle, if there are more right angles in the wave shape, the harsher it sounds. So something like distortion. These are some of the kinds of timbres you get with different wave shapes. Okay. Now, we experience sound organically. So when I talk to you, we are living beings and we talk to one another. The sound waves have a certain shape and a certain timbre. In the digital world, a computer cannot recreate these things by itself because it doesn't have a voice box, it doesn't have a throat, it doesn't have a diaphragm. What can the computer do instead? We approximate a sound wave by sampling. And that means you have the computer is able to reproduce little rectangles of digital information, of amplitude, of basically of volume and timbre. Each of those rectangles represent like some information about that, and it tries to approximate the shape of a curve. Okay, so the more times that a computer produces the rectangles, the closer it approximates analog sound. In other words, the higher your sample rate, the smoother, the nicer the sound. And this is measured in kilohertz. So a sample rate is measured in kilohertz, which means the number of thousands of samples taken per second. Right now, we're talking over Zoom and over digital audio, internet computer audio. It might be 11 kilohertz, which means that every second that goes by, 11,000 samples are being taken to reproduce and to recreate the waveforms of my voice so that you can hear. Now, that's 11,000 kilohertz. That's the low quality internet voice transmission. CD quality is 44.1. Standard digital video audio is 48 kilohertz. Now, there's a whole reason, there are industrial reasons as to why they decided on 44.1, 48. You don't need to know why, just that you need to know that when you record, when you press record on your device, on your phone, when you press record on your computer, these are the two numbers that are likely going to come out that you need to be aware of. Okay. So that was sample rate. Bit depth refers to the number. Well, you can read this on your own. So I'm not going to explain too much about this. All you need to know is that when you are configuring your device, when you're configuring your audio workstation, there are certain numbers that you need to set these to in order for your device to work. So yeah. So what does all this have to do with me? So the long and short is, the higher the numbers, the higher the resolution. In other words, the better the sound. We usually record audio at predefined resolutions. 44.1 kilohertz 16-bit audio. This is the standard. Every device every audio device is set to possibly this kind of setting. So if you were to go to your computer, let's say you check the sound settings, you can select between 44.1 kilohertz or 48 kilohertz. You can choose between 16-bit audio and 24-bit audio. What does it all have to do with you? The higher the numbers, the higher the resolution, the cleaner the sound. That being said, the higher the numbers, the better the sound, yes, but also the more processing power your computer needs to process it. And some devices cannot take higher sample rates. Some devices cannot. Some devices are not built for the different sample rates. For example, in Hollywood, the standard to produce like when you watch a movie and you hear sound effects like a click, a snap, the door opening, all that, they record at a minimum of a 96 kilohertz 24-bit audio. It sounds very good. It really sounds like if the clap, it really sounds like a clap is there, like someone's clapping in my ears, or the door opening, yeah, it really sounds like a door opening. But these files are so big, and these files take up so much processing power that it can crash your computer. Mine interface can record at 96 kilohertz. I tried it, my system crashed because it's not powerful enough to take these kinds of files. So the long and the short, you need to know sample rate in bit audio, because you and your worship team must use the same audio resolution. You all, if your files are recorded in 44.1 kilohertz and your station is a 48 kilohertz, you cannot save the audio file. What will happen is if you put the two together, you will warp the audio sound. Well, in trying to resample to 48, what will happen is the sound will start to warp. You get the tempo change, you get a pitch change, you get all sorts of weird artifacting happening in the sound. But I think the basic preset for every device is 44.1. Unless you specifically change it to 48 kilohertz, you can be rest assured that your computer, that you and your worship team can gel together, and the files can work together. This will only really come into play if, let's say, you have a more tech-savvy person, and if the person asks, hey, do you record at 48 or 44.1? You have to define whether you are going to record at 44.1. So if I'm the engineer and my musician, the more tech-savvy one says, hey, my interface records at 48 and 44.1, which one do I record at? You can tell him, my station only works at 44.1, you record at 44.1. So the two must match. You, the SD engineer, and the musician have to match these resolutions together. That being said, as I said, unless you specifically change these settings, they should be 44.1 16-bit. Okay. So now that so if you didn't understand any of that, don't worry. Watch the section again, meditate on it, and internalize it. So I need to go on. So what is a digital audio workstation? So if you imagine back in church, you go to the sound booth, the sound guy at his, at the back, and you see this giant console. And on that console, he pushes up faders to increase the volume of the guitar or the singer. He twists a knob to make the guitarist come from one speaker or the other speaker. Or he presses a button to add a delay or reverb effect on the voice, let's say. Now imagine all that processing that on the physical faders and the physical console. Imagine all of that processing on software. So this is your digital audio workstation. It is like a software representation of the mixing board in church. And it anchors the recording process, the recording, the editing, the mixing, and mastering, okay? Okay, so this is my digital audio workstation. This is Ableton Live, and every DAW, okay, so digital audio workstation is a mouthful, right? So if you're talking to a recording engineer or tech, he will just short form it. This is a DAW. Every DAW is slightly different, but the workflow is essentially the same. Every DAW works with audio files, and the audio files will be represented by a waveform, which will be aligned into tracks. Okay, so so forget. Don't be intimidated by how big the screen looks or the little things at the bottom here, right? I want you to focus your attention on these sections here, these horizontal lines. Okay, so how do you visualize the workflow in a digital audio workstation? The horizontal lines, horizontally, that refers to time. So time 0 is on extreme left, and your audio file, if your audio file is 6 minutes long, the extreme right is it will end at the time that audio file stops. So you need to understand that the horizontal axis, the horizontal plane, refers to time. The vertically, right? You can see in Ableton, they correspond to bar numbers. Okay, so if I go to right to the start of this workflow of this empty page, you see 1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 2, 2.2, so on and so forth, right? The reason why I like Ableton is because it represents the bars, and it represents it represents the number of bars, and also tells you which part. It also allows you to put files in different parts of the bar, and it snaps to the bar. So you see, if I click in between, right? If I click in between these, I cannot really click in between because it's snapping automatically to portions of the bar. So if I zoom in even further, okay, never mind. Okay, so let's say a bar's got 4 beats, right? If I want to align my audio file on, let's say, beat 2 of bar 2, I can click that because this is because the workstation is configured to automatically snap onto specific parts of the bar. This is important when you start to load audio tracks because, as you know, musicians perform to a metronome. They perform to time signature. They perform to a certain rhythm, and if you know the time signature, you know the rhythm, you can define these on the top left-hand corner here. So I'm going to talk about the transport bar, and this is the top bar of Ableton Live. Different DAWs will show the transport differently. The transport is the place where you can stop, you can play, you can stop, you can record. And as it plays, you can see the Ableton tells you, you can visually see where the bar is. And you can also see, and if you can see it with this line here, but you can also see it here as the bars go up, the Ableton is also counting them for you. The left side of Ableton and the transport control will also have the metronome control. So if I turn on, if you see the 2 dots here in Ableton, that's your metronome. If I enable the metronome, and this is set to 4/4, this is set to 120 beats per minute in 4/4, you'll be able to hear 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. So if I want to, let's say, start the recording on bar 4, I can click my cursor on bar 4 to, let's say, any of the tracks here. If I enable record, it will start to record this section here. That is, so this is basic navigation of the DAW, okay? So metronome here, time signature here to change the metronome settings, okay? So in a DAW, digital audio workstation, you have 2 types of files that you work with, 2 types of audio files. So audio files, not only do they come in your wave file, your waveform, like let's say if I sing and if I have that recording of my singing, you also have what we call a MIDI file. MIDI is basically the like if you get a virtual instrument to play MIDI. Whoops. Okay. I can take a small keyboard like this and I can input MIDI notes. And I play something, it will trigger a note in the DAW, and I can change to, let's say, a grand piano sound. I can change to a different a synth sound, a string sound, all using a little small keyboard like this, and changing the properties of the MIDI track. So 2 types of files, remember, audio, like 2 types of audio files. You've got your normal audio file, and then you've got a MIDI file. So you just need to take note of that. So what I like to do when I open up Ableton is that, because I don't really work with MIDI, right? Okay, I'm just, for the purposes of tonight, we're not going to work with MIDI too much. So I'm going to just cancel away these MIDI tracks. Okay. So now you're left with audio tracks. So the audio tracks will only take your wave files, the files of your voice, the files of a guitar recording, but it will not take a virtual instrument. It will not take notes from from MIDI or a virtual instrument. So you cannot put like your virtual drummer or your virtual keyboard on an audio track. And vice versa, you cannot load audio file. You cannot load like a wave file onto a MIDI track. It just doesn't work. So right now we have track 1 and track 2, as you can see from the. Okay, I'm going to drag your attention to the right side here. Track 1 and track 2, right? Now, if you move all the way down here, right, you start to see A reverb and B delay. What these are, and these these are also tracks, but you cannot load. But what their purpose is to they're called send and return tracks, and their purpose is to be able to direct the sound from, let's say, 2 tracks, right, into a reverb. Or if you want to send, you want to turn up, you want to add delay to your audio tracks, you turn up send B, and send B is delay here. In the real world, in the physical world, what this is if you go to your sound console, right, and you go to the mixing desk is on there, it's on the table. Likely, if you look under the table, there you'll see a rack, right? You'll see a rack, and you see like these little slots of machines that will do things like add reverb. They will add delay, they will EQ further, they'll compress further. Those are in the send return tracks of the console. This is so that you don't need to have one reverb. If you want to have like the same reverb for 2 tracks, you don't need to apply the reverb twice. You can set the reverb a certain way on the send track, and you can just turn up how much you want, how much reverb you want on each of these tracks. This is going to be important for later, because when you treat vocals, let's say, it's not going to be feasible for you to copy and paste the same reverb sound on all your audio tracks, because that's going to take up too much of your CPU. What you want to do instead is you want to configure one reverb, and then you get the tracks to send their information, the sing, the voices, instruments. You send a certain amount into the reverb in the send track, send A. Let's say send A's reverb, and that will give you a uniform reverb across the instruments. Because you also the thing about sound, right? The thing about time-based effects, or wet effects, as we call it. The thing about reverb and delay, if it's set differently from each instrument, it kind of sounds weird, and you'll be able to pick it out. It'll sound like because reverb essentially is like the sound of the room, the space. You hear the reflections from my microphone right now. That's because my mic is set in a certain acoustic environment. The reverb simulates that kind of acoustic environment, and if it's different across the different tracks, you're going to get a very mishmash sound. Maybe that's what you want to go for. So there are creative decisions to warrant the use of different reverbs with different instruments. But by and large, when we're working with a simple workflow like this, you want to send all your different voices to various degrees to the same reverb, to the same delay. If you need a delay, I normally don't have a delay. So for example, right, when I work in my workstation, I don't even have a delay on. I just have the reverb on. And so this is setting up the workstation, right? Now, in Ableton, what I like about Ableton is that on the left-hand side of Ableton, if you go to the left here, the little triangle, it opens up a browser. So this browser is kind of like your Windows Explorer, but it is built for Ableton's workflow. You have access to various things like your the different sound effects. You have access to different kinds of instruments. You have access to audio editing, what you need to, let's say you want to do a mastering or whatever, right? You've got presets here to help you achieve those sounds. But importantly for me, and as a basic principle, the browser is also where you will choose your plugins. Now I mentioned stuff like reverb and delay. I mentioned effects. The way to get effects into the digital audio workstation is to use a plugin. A plugin, as the term implies, it's like you take a piece of hardware, like let's say a reverb machine or whatever, right? And it's as if you're plugging into the track. So a plugin can work on a track. A track will take 2 things. A track will take your audio file, your waveform, your wave file of your voice performance, but a track will also take a plugin to modify the sound. So not only, so it gives you extra flexibility to change the qualities of the sound in your sound file. What does all this mean? I can hear another ha from some of you. All this means is this: your digital audio workstation and your collection of plugins, they are all part of your toolbox. And the engineer his role is to use the toolbox to come up and make something out of it. Or think of it this way: think of it as a color palette of an artist. So an artist will have a palette to, let's say, he wants to, I mean, you've got the different colors to make different things, right? On your canvas. This is like the sonic palette. This is the toolbox that you will use to edit, modify, change, do different things to the sound. Plugins can do that. But plugins don't just do that. There are some plugins that are virtual instruments. So the plugin's role is to be able to provide you access to other sounds. And they're all very personalized. They're all very, it's really up to the person's creativity. There are hundreds, thousands of free plugins, free instruments that you can use to your advantage, to your creative process. And tonight, I hope to share with you some of these tools. All right. So let's say you're the engineer. Hi now, 8:49. Okay, I got to speed up. You're the engineer. You have been given the task of editing one guitar and one vocal. What happened before all of this is that the worship leader, the music director, and you had a conversation to do the song "Build My Life." And then they decided, the worship leader and music director decided that they will arrange the song in a certain way. And once this arrangement is set in stone, they provided a guide track to help the singers sync up, to help the musicians sync up. You cannot expect people to perform all the, okay, so as I said in my previous webinar, you cannot expect all the musicians to play the same thing if you don't tell them what to play. So the guide track's purpose is to provide enough information so that the musicians or singers know which sections are coming up and will keep them all in time. So there are three things in a guide track: the cue track, which is the audio, the giving of the audio commands.
Intro. Keys. 1, 2, 3, 4.
And then you got the click track, and that purpose is to sync up the musicians. And for today's purpose, I provided a pad because you can provide a guitar recording, you can provide a keyboard recording. What I did was, because I didn't have time to do any of that, right? And I kind of know how the song goes in my head. I just put a simple pad file. So this is how a wave file looks like when you load it onto a track. So I do that from scratch, okay? So let's say you need to add the keyboard pad sound. Using the browser feature on Ableton, I organize my files so that I know where to look in my folders as to where I put my pads. So I know that my pads are in 00 pads. You can look at my file allocation here. And I know that I want to play this sound, pads. So how do you load a track? Loading a track is as simple as dragging and dropping. On your browser side, simply click the file you want, drag it over onto Ableton, release, and it will automatically load up. So as you can see, this file is pretty big. You can see, and I hope you can understand this visually, that the song technically ends at bar 112, right over here. See bar 113 here. So bar 112 is the last bar. But you see that, wow, this track goes all the way, it's a 15-minute, right? Or something like that. So it's very, very far away, right? What you can do to manipulate, a digital audio workstation can manipulate audio files in this way. You can change the length of the file. So all I did was that I hovered my mouse over the file on like the edge of the file, and you start to see this bracket. When you see this bracket, this allows you to change the length of the clip. So I clicked, I held it, and I dragged all the way back here. Okay, yes, so you can also, like on Windows and on Mac, you can press a control button and your scroll, the scroll will on your mouse will change the zoom level. So right now we are at the 10,000 foot view of our project. If you want to zoom in on, let's say, bar 49, I click somewhere near bar 49, I press control and I move that mouse all the way in.
Chorus 2.
Just turn this off.
Chorus 2, 3, 4.
If you want to know how to build a cue track, if you want to know how to build a guide track, that's for another webinar. But all you need to know is that this is the guide track that helps musicians to keep time together. Most importantly, I think, is what I like to call the clap cue. So if you remember how Hollywood does their production, if you're on the set of a Hollywood movie, you have one guy whose sole job is to take a clapper, take one, clap. His job is to move that in front of the camera so that when he claps, this camera captures the motion of the clap, and whoever's recording audio, the microphones, they will hear the clap. And then the editor's role in the film room is to match those 2 points together. That clap becomes a sync point for the person in post-production to put all the tracks together. This is not necessary if you're the only person who is singing and playing guitar. Let's say if you're the one person on camera, you're playing guitar, you're singing, you don't need to clap or have a clapper because you're just one person. But if you need to coordinate between two different people, the singer and the guitarist are two different persons, I highly recommend having a clapper, or at least some place to a cue track that has embedded a clap to give directions so as to make sure that everyone syncs up. So I'm going to give an example, right? I'm going to demonstrate it right here. So let's start from the top. Let's play.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Intro. Keys.
And you hear the intro go on, right?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Because the moment you press record on your device and the moment you press play on your backing track, it's going to be two different times. That clap allows you to sync everybody up. I'm going to show this to you live in person. So let's say the cue track went out. You got your singer to sing, you got a guitarist to play, you reminded them that they needed to clap in the introduction. How does this look like when you mix it together in the workstation? So my DAW now has 3 tracks. I can have more tracks. Some DAWs have unlimited track count. You can go all the way, have how many instruments you want, right? Just the other day, the news was talking about how when we were singing "This Is Home Truly" to the frontline workers, the guy had to mix 900 tracks or something, some crazy number like that. There are products that allow you to go up to 900 tracks. For our purposes, you're maybe dealing with 8 to 9 tracks. Let's say you have a singer, you have two support singers, you have a guitarist, bass player, drums, keyboard player. That's like 7 people. So realistically, you're looking at between 7 to 8 tracks for a full song. Let's do some math. SATB, if you're doing a choir recording, you've got piano, 1 S, 1 A, 1 T, 1 B. That's 5 tracks because you've got 5 people singing or 5 people who are playing music. If you have 10 people per section, 10 sopranos, 10 or 10, 10, you will need 40 tracks to mix 40 singers. Of course, you also need that one track. You need that extra track for the piano or organ. So you got 41. So you need 41 tracks if you have a 41-piece worship team. But for our purposes today, we'll start very small. 1 singer, 1 guitar player. All right, I'm going to load up. The files. So again, I go to my Explorer here, right? Okay, so before we go on, I'm going to talk about cleaning up the audio. typically what happens when you send out the request for people to record, they will submit their files, and these files will be in a certain, they will be recorded in a certain environment. Sometimes the environment will have a little bit of background noise. If the singer forgot to close the window, I'm not sure if you can hear it right now. Can you hear that? The light rumble sound? That's my air conditioner. The key principle is, if you can hear it, if you can hear something in the background, your phone, your mobile device, or tablet will definitely be able to hear it out. If you can feel something on your head, the movement of air, so let's say the fan is on, right, and you feel it ruffling through your hair, you can't really hear the sound, but I promise you, it's making a boom, 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 boom sound onto your fan. The fan is making that kind of sound into your microphone. It will be picked up. So sometimes, if the audio is if there's so much background noise in the audio, right? Right now, given that we are working with free software, given that we're working with free tools, it is quite impossible to clean up the audio if it has so much background noise. But if it's got a simple kind of background noise, like maybe a light rumbling of the aircon, like the aircon is at 1 or something, or if the window is open and you can hear some background traffic, like mild, very mild background traffic, yes, the free tools that we have will be able to address these things. So I'm going to show you what happens when someone sends me a file, okay? So let's say, my folder is quite messy, but I have a singer who gave me I have a singer who gave me his audio track, and I'm going to use a free tool for this. I'm going to use Audacity to help me see how much or how drastic the noise problem is. So I'm going to, remember how I said, okay, so Audacity is it's also a free digital audio workstation. This is a free DAW, but it's quite severely limited because it doesn't snap audio to the bar counts like Ableton does. It doesn't have a file explorer like Ableton does, and you cannot apply effects or plugins very easily. So that's why I don't recommend Audacity as like that's why I don't really recommend this to mix a full band. If you want to mix a full band, or like more than 4 singers or whatever, you're going to need something with a bit more power, like Ableton Live. So I'm going, remember how I drag and drop the file from the Explorer onto the DAW? You can do the same thing with Audacity. So I'm going to find my voice here. Oops, no, that's not what I'm going to do. Drag and drop. Okay, so this is the representation of the singer's submission. And as you can see, there's a very big, there's a clap there. Yes, so the singer remembered to clap. All right, I'm not sure you can hear this on your side, but can you hear the hissing sound? Okay, so there's a mild hissing sound, and the way to get rid of that is to use Audacity's free noise removal tool. So there are 2 ways to get rid of noise. You can, if you only need to do a mild, if there's only mild noise reduction necessary, right? If your voice or if the instrument is so very loud compared to the noise, what you can do is to apply a noise gate, which I'll show you later. It's a very simple thing. All that means is that past a noise gate is, imagine it like a physical gate, right? A noise gate allows sound of a certain volume to pass through. And if it drops below a certain volume, it closes shut. That's a noise gate. Noise removal, what it does, it detects and analyzes the kind of background noise, and it tries to apply some processing power to remove it artificially. So let's say I want and it requires a bit. I'll show you what I mean. So let me zoom in on some of the noise here. Okay, you see like you see the waveform like from on the timeline. You see that little bit of dots here and there. That's noise. Yeah, you can see a bit of noise. So the way to do this, to remove the noise, is to highlight a certain section of the noise under Effect. So Audacity has some built-in effects, and it's really great. For the fact that it's free is insane. It's very good noise reduction. So go down to Audacity, under Effect, right? Go down to Noise Reduction. And noise reduction, get Noise Profile, so that Audacity knows what to filter out. So once you have isolated the noise, you need to highlight the whole track. You can do this in a couple of ways. You can left click and drag to highlight the whole track, or you can click an empty space on the side of the track here to highlight the track. Go to Effect, repeat Noise Reduction, and let it process. My computer has got 16 gigs of RAM, so this is moderately fast. On the slower system, it will take a bit of time to process. So don't fret if it takes longer. It just means that maybe your system is not as doesn't have much memory. So Audacity has done its job. You can go back to watch this, but what you saw happen was that the waveforms shrank a little bit. This is because if you zoom in on the section that we analyze the sound, it's essentially gone. So your audio file should be a bit cleaner now. If I will just quickly zoom in on this.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring.
Okay, yeah, that is good, and that was recorded on a phone. I was given the challenge to record the instruments using the phone, so I did that. And when I recorded using the phone, to get that kind of clean audio, I had to do a few things. I put a blanket over myself. I had the phone set up on a little, actually I think I can do this right now. I have a little tripod like this. I set up the phone to be roughly like a 15 cm away. Like, I can see this there. My virtual background eraser. Yeah, around 15 cm away from the phone, and I put a blanket over myself, and then I hit record, and then I used the voice recorder app, and I did that. The voice recorder app can record good quality audio if you configure its settings. So I encourage you to go back to my previous webinar. The video is going to be out soon. I encourage you to go back to the webinar, check out the settings that I put for the phone. You need to have noise, lossless information. You need to have a lossless setting for the phone so that it's the highest quality possible recording you can get. All right, so the reason why I put the blanket over my head was so that I can have maximum isolation. You want to get rid of all the background noise. You want to, as much as possible. I mean, it's not 100%, as you can see. You can still hear some background noise. But if this was recorded in my bedroom, and this was recorded when I closed all the windows, I made sure I was in front of my bed so that when I do sing, there's enough soft material to absorb the reflections. And the blanket over my head made sure that the sound doesn't reflect off the wall behind me. So I really I looked like a you know, last time you used to play like Ghost by putting a blanket over yourself. Yeah, that's kind of the same thing. So it is possible to record voice with maximum isolation using the phone, but you do need to do stuff like this, like hiding under a blanket, etc., etc. So I cleaned up the audio in Audacity. Okay, I won't save because I did this. I did this before it started, so so that I can do this live. Right. So you should get a denoised file. So I like to save as, and I like to rename the file so that it's denoised, right? So the browser function on Ableton allows you to drag and drop from its own Explorer, its own browser, but you can also do the same from the Windows Explorer. So if you have your own folder, you bring it out, you can click, hold, drag, and drop. Now you notice this singer, he pressed the record button on his phone first. Then he pressed play on the playback device. This is why the 2 times don't sync. You can see the clap is here. here, clap there. So I'm just gonna mute the. I'm just gonna mute. Okay, so clap. How do you sync up then? Because if you hear, no, you can't hear now, but how do you just sync up the clap then? Well, I assume that his rhythm is okay, so I can drag and drop. So what I did was I highlighted, so you can click and hold on the track, right? And you can move it back and forth to change the position where it is on the timeline. With Ableton, you're able to align this like this. 4. So hopefully that's aligned. Why is this important, even though it's one singer? Because this is not the only guy who is singing. Okay, so before we go on, if you notice on the right-hand side of the tracks, right, you can notice the names are here. So cues, click, pad, etc. All right. When you start getting 8, 9, 10, 16 tracks on a DAW, you're going to lose track of what is what. So I like to rename the track. So I forgot to mention this. Renaming the track is important for file management. So I rename this as, let's say, voice. Yes, here we go. So the electric guitarist also submitted a file. Right? I'm going to drag and drop. The sync is even further apart. I said to clap.
Intro. Key.
So the electric guitarist recorded this using the phone and putting the phone near the guitar amplifier. So I'm going to sync these two up together. Yeah, so you can actually zoom in all the way right down and you see that the waveform looks like that. So it should sound like this.
Verse 1, 2, 3, 4.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing. Worthy of all the praise we could ever bring. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you.
All right, so I'm not sure we can hear this very clearly on your end, but when I hear it, right, when I receive these files, I notice a few things. Number one, the guitar player, his amp is loud compared to the background noise. So actually, I just solo this guy, right, you can hear that there's some background noise here. And the singer, his file, you can visually see this. You can visually tell that his voice is softer compared to how loud the guitar is at some point. So at some points in the song, the guitar is actually very loud. You notice that there's a lot of black. The waveform occupies the space so much. Here's the thing. When you do recording, right, let's say you're getting your singers to record, the closer you are to the microphone, the louder your voice will be. Now, if I were to increase my voice and past a certain point, the microphone is not going to be able to handle my volume, and it will start to what we call clip. Now, if you zoom in on the guitarist here, right, some of his waveform, like that part here, it's a bit too loud, so the top of the file gets shaven off in recording. This tells me that the recording was. This is a case where the recording is too hot. We have a term for that. The recording is the guitar is too hot. It is very loud in the mix. It is very loud for the recorder, and the recorder cannot take it. It started to distort. Now this is I think it is hot. It is indeed a hot file, but it's not so hot that it causes distortion, or at least very noticeable distortion. If you try this on your own, and if I try to yell into the microphone like this, or into the microphone, you will hear a kind of sound if the microphone gets overloaded. Same thing with the phone. The phone has a certain what we call headroom, right? There's a certain amount of sound that can be recorded before the phone starts to overload. And because the guitarist put the phone right next to the amp, that amp is blasting right into the microphone of the phone. That's why you get a hot hot, like that's why it's recorded hot. You can do a few things to amend this. I personally don't like the file to be so hot. So Ableton, so what you can do, okay, so Ableton, right? Okay, I'm going to rename this guitar. Ableton has two different views. Okay, one view gives you a visual representation of your project from left to right. When you press Tab, this brings you to a view where you can see each track. Importantly, don't worry about the squares on top here. I want you to focus your attention on this side of the screen, the bottom part of each of the tracks. So whereas this view is horizontal view of the track, this view makes a vertical view of the tracks. So each column is one track. Again, in this view, in the what we call in the arranger view, I think it's arranger view. Okay, so in one of these views, each row is a track. In this view, each column is a track. And the reason why that's important is because it helps me to visually see information down here. Okay, do you see these things? Okay, let's focus on the guitar track. Okay, I'm going to highlight the guitar track. Let's go all the way down here. Okay, you see this information here? All right. The lit up number tells me that the track is live. I can disable the track.
2, 3, 4.
And there's no you can't hear what the guitar's playing. But if I enable it, you can hear. We could ever sing. This button here, S, that stands for solo. So if you want to hear, let's say the full mix is on, you have all the tracks on. If you just want to hear the guitar, you can solo it. You can press this to solo it. Yeah, so this helps me to, if I want to isolate the guitar and just treat it by itself and toggle in between, let's say hearing the full mix and just guitar, this solo button helps me do that. Okay, there are two more things that I need to bring your attention to. Number one is you see this little triangle here. Okay, if I have to play that green line is how loud the sound is. Now, I want to lower the volume of the guitar. How do I do that? This little triangle, I can bring it down. And as you will hear, the volume of the guitar goes down when I drag this down. So I play. All we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. So the basic way of adjusting the mix, the volume of each of the individual tracks is using this slider here. This is the track volume fader or slider. It will the more you bring it down, the softer it becomes. You can and I'm not sure you can see this, but you can, if you go to the bottom left hand corner, there's a little dialog that says track volume, and you can see that as I move it up, it's minus 4 dB now. Okay, so look at the bottom left hand corner, track volume, it should say minus 4 dB. If I drag it down, the number decreases even more. So this is now minus 16.6 dB. Okay? All we could ever sing. So that gives me a better balance to bring down the guitar. But wait, that's not all. You want to right now we are able to bring down the volume of the guitar, but it is still it is occupying the same space in the stereo field. So we've talked about changing the volume, right? Now we need to think about how the sound is being perceived by your left and your right ear. So we experience sound in 3 dimensions, and we experience it
across our ears from left to right. If you go back and listen to your favorite song, maybe the lead singer might be singing. If you close your eyes, right, and imagine a virtual stage, you can hear that the singer is probably in the middle, and then you can hear a guitar slightly to the right. You can hear the keyboard slightly to the left of the left side of your ear. Now this is a stereo field, and what the engineer did to move those instruments around on the virtual stage to give a sense of space and depth perception is what we call panning. The pan control is how you change the position of a sound in stereo field between left and right. Okay, that pan control is right there. You see this little, okay, I'm going to try again. See this big circle here that's got it looks like a power button. Okay, it's not a power button. It's not, you click it, it doesn't turn off the track or whatever. What this tells me right now, the dial is set to center. This means that the guitar is coming right from the center. If I have to move the dial, let's say leftwards, and you see the blue marking and happening, and you see the blue marking and the right now it looks like this, right? This tells me that the guitar should be coming from your left ear.
All we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every.
If I change the pan, let's say, okay, I don't want the guitar to be on the left, I want it to be on the right, I can click it, drag it, and move it to the right-hand side, and you should hear that the guitar is now on your right.
All we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring.
So what happened? We achieved some stereo separation between the singer and the guitar player. When we see bands play live on stage, you don't see the singer and the guitarist standing in a straight line, one behind the other, right? You see them slightly apart. You see them. You see that the band occupies the stage on several parts. You know, the drummers there, bass players there, whatever. We achieve a similar sense of virtual separation with stereo imaging. This is important because once you have more than 2 or 3 instruments at a go, you're going to find that it's very thick, very gao in the center, and it doesn't sound good. It sounds muddy. It sounds like everything's trying to mesh to each other. Maybe it's not an issue of the sound being bad, but it's just an issue of the fact that all your instruments are being played from the same stereo space in the stereo field. All right. So with guitars, and if I have a voice and a guitar, right, I normally try to, one voice and one guitar may not need so much stereo separation. What you could do is move it slightly left, slightly right.
All we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring.
Okay, I tried to stereo separate the voice and the guitar. That was done, but the voice is still too soft. It's still very soft compared to the guitar. Now, this is where I'm going to teach you 3 things. I'm going to teach you 2 basic mixing techniques. Actually, there are 3, and I just taught you 1, stereo imaging. That's when you move the instruments on different parts of the stereo field. Now I'm going to show you compression. I'm going to show you equalization. The 2 they do different things. When you want to make a sound, okay, so a singer's dynamics he has very loud parts, he has very soft parts. In a recording situation, when you've got a band playing, when the soft parts will be drowned out by the rest of the band. The way to get your singer's soft parts to be above the low parts of the band, to be above the band if it sings low, is to use a compressor. A compressor, it makes the high parts of the sound softer and the soft parts of the sound louder. So in other words, it evens out the volume from start to finish. Okay, so I'm going to load up a plug-in. That's why I mentioned it was important. And the free one that I use has there's a suite of plugins that are completely free, and the one that I use is quite nice. It's called Melda Production, and I can provide the link in the slides. But similar to how we dragged and dropped audio file into a track, you can drag and drop a plugin onto a track. So I'm going to drag this compressor onto the voice. So a compressor's control can look very intimidating. There's so many knobs to do to take care of, right? What I like about Melda Production is that they give you presets. If you don't know what these things do, if you're in, certainly you can take the extra time to learn more. But for our purposes today, let's just go down to 2 different presets: Sing 1, Sing 2. So I'm going to load up Sing 2. Okay. And I'm going to lower the input because I know that this is actually quite a high. This will make the voice clip. It'll make the voice be too hot in the mix. So with this initial setting, you should hear the voice get a lot louder.
All we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you.
So I hope that you can hear this on your end, but the voice became a lot more prominent because I added a compressor, and I can adjust how loud the compressor is going to raise the volume of the singer. Let's say set plus 7 dB.
If we could ever breathe, we live for you.
Verse 2.
Okay, that sounds pretty okay. Now, that's compression. Compression, as I said before, it is to make the soft parts louder and the loud parts softer so that the volume evens out across the whole sound file, and you can basically raise up the singers you can make it more prominent in the mix, so you won't be hidden by the guitar or the band. Okay. As I said before, this is something that you should go back. It's 9:25. I need to be rushing a bit. You can go back to read up what all these controls do, but suffice it to say, for our purposes, and if you're a complete beginner, it's completely okay to use presets. So I'll reiterate again, when you open up the compressor, you click on the, with Melda Production, you can click on the middle portion here. You can bring up a few presets, and these will give you a starting point as to how you want the compressor to sound. I've got a certain, and I don't really deviate much from the presets. Sometimes when I'm really rushing for time, I don't bother with like tweaking it to my liking. I just know that with certain presets, it achieves a certain kind of sound that I like. And with the M compressor, I know that around plus 7 dB plus 3 dB output is like where the sweet spot is for my vocal. Okay. Now, the next step in the basic mixing technique, you've compressed the signal, but right now you hear that it's still not as clear. There's no, that doesn't have that kind of like polished kind of sound. You want to make it sound a bit more pristine. The way to do that is to apply equalization or EQ. So I'm going to drag this equalizer plugin onto the track, into my vocal track. Now, we all know, as I've shared in the introduction, that sound is basically a collection of frequencies, okay? Now, there are some frequencies that, okay, so the recording device will record everything, all frequencies across the spectrum. The human ear hears frequencies from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. And that's the range of hearing, and that's why when you look into equalizers, right, and the settings, the range of EQ that you can apply normally is within 20 to 20,000 hertz, 20 kilohertz. You can see that, again, with an XY graph, that you cannot escape secondary school math. With the X and Y graph, you look at the x-axis. X-axis refers to the frequency, right? So it starts at 20, ends at 20K, because that's the limit of human hearing. The Y-axis is how loud those frequencies get boosted or cut. Now with EQ, you want to make each instrument occupy its space in the EQ, the frequency spectrum. If all instruments are blasting every frequency at the same time, in your ears, you're gonna experience it as fatigue. It's like sonic fatigue. Like every frequency is hitting you at the same time. Now on mixing, when it comes to mixing and when it comes to like recording engineering, the engineer's job is to identify the instrument, identify which frequencies are nice for the instrument, and to make those frequencies a bit more prominent, to cut out everything else that's not needed. So for example, the bass, normally with a voice, I don't need anything from 50 hertz and below, because all that bass information, it's going to occupy the same space as the bass player. Okay, of course, mixing is different for SATV environment, but for the band, I say to you first. Okay, the equalizer works this way. When you see these numbers here, right? This tells you how many points that you can change on the EQ curve. All right, so right now, number 4 is highlighted because it's on, but because it's at 0 dB, it's not any boost. It's not boosting or cutting anything. Now, I want to get rid of the bass information from my voice because I think that might cloud the guitar's low end or the guitar's bass, the bass frequencies in the guitar. To do that, I double click on number 1 because that's the lowest end. That's the first thing in the equalizer. And I pull down, all right? Now, yeah, on the XY spectrum, I pull down on at the 50 dB mark because as you can see, anything below this part here, this shaded part here, that is being cut out from the frequency. Okay, so you won't hear this very much in the recording now because it's terrible Zoom audio. But trust me, when you start to stack vocal tracks together, you will want to get rid of the unnecessary frequencies. Now, I know with a mobile phone, the mobile phone is configured to have voice conversations and to be audible over phone conversation. What this means is that they will limit there's a lot less treble information, and there's a very prominent spike in the mid frequencies, upper mid frequencies. You can hear it's a bit honky sounding. It's a bit honky, like that honky sounding you hear on the phone. That's by design. It's because that's the easier frequency to kind of like pick up over the phone. So to compensate for this, you need to treat the phone audio the following way. I cut out the low end, I bring up the high end. So right now I'm going to gently raise up maybe, somewhere around the 10K or 12K. I'm going to raise up maybe by 4 or 5 dB. Let's see how that sounds like.
Like you, there is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder.
Okay, so I'm gonna solo this actually.
Like you, there is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are and fill.
So you can automatically hear that when I introduce a bit of that high end back in, actually not a bit, like it's quite a big, it's a big boost, like 12 dB of boost. But because I put that high end back in, the microphone opened up and you can hear a bit more sheen, a bit more clarity in the voice. Now the problem with the phone is that there's a big mid spike, right? And I'm going to show you a technique to isolate the mid frequency that is problematic for your phone. So follow along. Again, you don't understand, don't worry, go back to the video recording, watch this again. I'm going to show the process when I identify a problematic frequency.
Guide you, open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to the...
So you can sort of hear that when I boosted this mid frequency around the 12, around the between the 1 to 2K, there's a very distinct nasal kind of sound. Now that is something that that is a problematic frequency because it's very harsh in your ears, or at least in my ears when I use my monitoring headphones. So to compensate for this, I bring it down. Now that I know which part of the frequency spectrum that the mid spike is causing the voice to sound very nasally, I can isolate it and bring it down. I pull it down, maybe let's say 5 dB first. I'm going to hear our song.
You open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me.
Trust me, I'm doing this very quickly now, but when you're doing this on your own, your first trial, right, it will take hours. But I hope you can hear the difference. Okay, I'm gonna bypass I'm gonna turn it off first. This is the original sound.
Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me.
So you heard that? I hope you can hear it, but the voice suddenly became a lot less harsh and a lot less nasally piercing in my ear. And that's because I isolated that frequency by, I don't know the exact name for this, but it's like calling it a sweep, because you're bringing up the EQ and then you're trying to isolate a problematic frequency. You find that problematic frequency, you found it, you want to take it out, pull it right down. With the phone, it's going to be a lot more dramatic because it needs a lot of work. But if you're recording with a decent microphone, like let's say, I mean, you can't see it now, but I got a condenser microphone here. This EQ curve is going to look a lot more gentle. You don't need to do such drastic cuts to the mids and some drastic boosts to the high end. Now, there are a few more things that you can do to treat the sound even better. So the problem with raising the highs so high is that now the sibilants, the s sounds, the t sound, the d, even the d sounds, these sounds are going to sound very prominent in the mix because you've raised up the high end so much. The one way to get rid of that is to apply what we call a de-esser. Okay, so this is still part of equalizing. You've boosted the high end, you've made sure it sounds, you make sure that there's clarity and there's sheen in your vocal. Now you need to treat a problem area, the sibilant sounds. The way to treat it is to use a de-esser. I'm going to drag and drop the de-esser here. Now I got, it's free, Lisp 64, which is 64-bit. Okay. Again, we don't need to know anything about this other than the fact that the more you turn this reduction dial, the more the s sound gets taken away. So I'm going to set this, I know by ear, roughly around the level 8 or level 12 will start to get a decent result. So let me click again.
If we could ever breathe, we live for you. Like you, there is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me.
So hopefully you heard that the sibilants went down a bit. Now, what's a problematic word that's got two sibilants in it? Jesus. Jesus' name has two sibilants in it. There are two S's in Jesus' name, so Jesus. I kid you not, when you mix a song where the name Jesus is repeated so many times, the sibilants can really cause a bit of fatigue on the ear. So it may not be so prominent now because Jesus' name may not come out so often in this song, but I can tell you, there are many songs, or there are many words that have the S sound in it, many words with the V sound in it. You can hear how many sibilants are coming your way. This is an important thing to note of. But then again, if it's not a problem for you and your church, if you've mixed it without the de-esser, and if no one seems to pick up on it, that there's a problem with the S sounds, then you can probably ignore it. I say this because YouTube has a certain way of compressing audio over the internet. So it really depends on where you are putting this audio file. If you're producing this for a YouTube video, Facebook video, those online platforms have their own algorithms, their own settings to upload audio files at. So the codec will be changed. the sound will be compressed in a certain way. And after all that is done, maybe you don't need to apply such a stringent de-esser. But if you're we are not mixing this to be played on a high definition hi-fi system that's like $10,000 and it's got like preamps and tube pre's or whatever, right? I know there's some of you audiophiles out there who have got that kind of setup, but we're not mixing for that kind of situation because that kind of situation requires Grammy Award-winning editing. We are not Grammy Award-winning editors. We are here to edit for church. All this means is try, test it out. Your first mix won't be your best mix. Your first mix will help you to identify some problem areas you need to work on. If you still have too much sibilance, too much of the S sound in your recording, you can go back to it for the next week, try to apply a de-esser, see how it sounds like, and maybe it will treat the problem. Okay, I'm ready to start to go along. Okay, so right now I've shown you compressing, I've shown you equalizing, I've shown you stereo imaging, where to put the instruments on. It's possible to move the instruments on the stereo field. Melda Audio has a pretty fun function. It's got auto-tune on it, so use with caution. It's not the best auto-tune. It's not like Untitled auto-tune, but you can apply auto-tune to the singer's voice. And it's not at this setting, at the 50% depth and speed, it can sound a bit robotic. So I know if I use Melda Audio's auto-tune, I normally have a starting point of 30%. Bring it down. And then, of course, because it's in the key of D major, I specify the key, and hopefully I sound a bit better.
Holy, there is no one like you, there is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder.
Use at your own caution, right? The general tip that I have with auto-tune is this. When you have a full mix, let's say when you have full band, guitar, bass, whatever, right? A full mix, auto-tune gets disguised a bit, so you can have a bit more liberal use of auto-tune. And I like to use auto-tune on especially when I treat harmonies, because I know that sometimes our singers they don't track harmony very well. I mean, that's specific to my church. Sorry, Amokyo guys, if you're here. Sometimes the harmony is not 100% on pitch. I don't need to scrap the take. I can use auto-tune and kind of like hide it and disguise it in the mix. Okay. But by itself, if you just have one voice and a very little, very, very sparse mix with just one guitar and one voice, you can definitely hear that there's some auto-tune going on. So I'm going to disable that and show the world that I'm not a good singer at all. Okay. If you only have one guitar, one voice, I have a trick for you. Okay. I'm going to show this trick to you. Okay. Of course, given time, I'll apply the same techniques on the guitar track. I'll compress the guitar track. I'll equalize the guitar track. I might even do some other special effects on it to make it sound bigger. But the trick with a one guitar, one voice situation, if it sounds too gao in the middle, right? Like if I were to get both of these instruments to play in the middle and just disable everything else. Okay, I just had the pad on, just because I like a pad.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring.
Okay, it's very gao in the center, right? What you can do with a guitar is you can copy, paste, duplicate. So Control D doubles a track. It copies everything from the track. And what I like to do with the guitar is that I like to put it hard left, hard right. Of course, bring down the levels a little bit more. Have the singer in the center, and you get this sound.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you.
That's one trick you can do. Hard pan, this is what I call hard panning, when you have the guitars all the way left and the guitar all the way right. I like to do this with, depends on your guitar too, but I like to have, I like this sound. It's a very spatially separated sound. It gives the singer in the center all the space that the sound needs, while leaving, it leaves space for the singer in the center, and you're free to adjust the levels, individual levels of the guitar, left and right. So if you need less of the guitar in the right ear, you can bring it down.
Of every other name, Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe.
So what you can hear is that now the guitar sounds bigger. It sounds like it's encompassing it's encompassing the virtual stage, as it were. And this is one of the tricks that I like to do with the guitar. And I'll give you that trick to you free of charge. You can go ahead and use it on your next simple mix. Now we have 15 minutes left. Now I want to show you some things that you can do to correct a mix. Okay. All right. Here's the thing. I know that, so the challenge was given to me to record everything by iPhone. So I did that. I used my iPhone to record my vocals. I put it in front of the amp, of my guitar amp. And because I also have a power amp at home, it's one of those like two passive speakers, not two passive speakers. I have a 2-speaker system. I have a sound system for live sound events. So I've got 100-watt speakers that I can plug instruments into. So I use that to record the acoustic and record the bass. So I put the phone in front of the speakers to record the acoustic and the bass, because I like the amplified sound more than I like the acoustic sound, because my acoustic is very small, so it tends to be very boxy sounding. To compensate for that, I recorded it amplified using my speaker system at home. So I'm going to let you hear the full mix. And because I am, I like to play cheat a bit, I think this is an opportunity for people to experience full band, So if you have the chance to do full band, why not full band, right? I have my music notation software that allows me to compose drum parts. So when I compose a drum score, and of course this is a whole new lesson in itself. I can probably put this together another time, but instead of using the default sound here, I export all of this MIDI score. This is written in MIDI score, right? I export this as a MIDI file. I put it into Ableton, and I load up a drum machine, and I get this sound. Okay, I'll go from the verse.
Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. We live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. We live for you. none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. And holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you.
Okay, so we're short for time, so what I'm going to do is this. Okay, so imagine with me, you have sent out your backing track to various singers, right? And you got someone to sing harmony. That's great. But let's say he gabra. Let's say the singer forgot to sing, he forgot to sing the chorus a second time and missed the chorus completely. What you can do, and this is the final step, right? This is the editing phase. This is the phase where you want to fix mistakes. What you can do, and depends on your artistic integrity, is you can do stuff like copy and pasting to fill in the gaps. I wanted the singer to sing harmony twice, but let's say he forgot, right? You can take his sound file, cut out a section, copy and paste. So I'm going to show that to you right now. You want to isolate that part. This is the whole chorus, right? That I wanted the harmony to. Paste and
around me, and holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes and wonder, show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me.
Oh no, the guitar player played a wrong chord. I'm going to isolate that. Terrible guitar player, huh? By the way, it's me. So I played a wrong chord in that. I'm going to save that, right? Well, that's the thing about this kind of contemporary songs. The sections get repeated so many times, right? So I know that this chorus was repeated twice. I know that my first chorus was okay. So I'm going to find a spot where I got a clean, correct chorus. So, okay, yeah, wrong button. Okay. Yeah, that's the spot that's incorrect, right? I'm gonna go back, let's say one section before that. Yep, so this section here is the correct chord. I should be pasting it over. So you can control copy, control paste, and you get this.
With your heart and lead me in your love to those around me.
Yeah. Artistic integrity, I mean, if you're hard pressed for time, you can leave the mistake in. Is it distracting? You need to answer that question. If it's too distracting, if it's something that you're gonna get text messages next day, hey, you played wrong chord, right? I think you would try to save the take. If you cannot get the guitarist to re-record, you can try to do stuff like this, like cut and paste with different sections to hide and hide the mistake. One more thing before I let y'all go is that I want to show you what happens if let's see, where the section is. Okay, it's important that singers communicate with one another before the song's recorded, because singers need to know vocal rhythms. They need to know how long to hold a note for. They need to know how the notes are syncopated in a phrase, because if you don't land on the same, if you don't attack the note the same way, if you don't finish the note in the same way, you're gonna sound off. You're gonna sound not together. So this is what it may sound like. Here, the harmony singer is not singing in time and not singing correctly.
Upon your love, it is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in.
So you can tell, actually visually you can tell, right? The waveform here, you can see that this, where you see the wave starting to build up a little bit, this is not very in time with the singer, and he kind of corrects himself over here. So what you can do is to slowly nudge him into the correct position. So what you can do, you can slice a sound section in a particular place, and then you notice as you zoom in that the wave files don't match up they don't really match perfectly. What you can do is slowly nudge him until he sounds more in tune or more together.
Upon your love, it is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone.
Much better, right? So this is compounded. So this problem is compounded if you have way more singers. Let's say even a 3-part harmony, right? This can get out of hand very quickly. If you don't get the singers to sing the same vocal rhythm, you're gonna end up with situations like this.
There is no one like you. There is none beside you. Oh.
Complete chaos, right? Because one guy's rushing, one guy's lagging. Okay, it's not that drastic in real life, but it can sound super off. But if you get the singers to go, all right, you're going to syncopate this phrase a certain number of times, or you're going to syncopate the phrase a certain way, you're going to land the note on a certain way, you're going to hold the note a certain way. Let's hear how that sounds like with that kind of communication.
Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. I will build my life upon you.
So I leave you with this. The audio engineer's role is I'm going to reiterate and bookend it with what we started with. Your task is to make your team members shine. Your task is to treat each team member's submissions with respect and to honor them because they took the time and effort to record. So that means doing all that you can on your part. If that means helping to nudge them a little bit in time, if that means to apply a bit of pitch correction so that it's not so distracting to the ear, I think it is a way to serve your team members who manage to submit. And I want to emphasize that the tighter your communication with your team, the more that you get the worship leader, musicians, and the recording engineer, the sound guys, video guys to talk to each other more, to settle on arrangements more, to be very clear. Okay, this song has got intro, verse, chorus, verse, chorus, bridge. If that kind of tight communication happens, all the post-processing is going to be a lot easier on your end. You'll realize that that the preparation stage is much more important than the execution phase. So worship leaders, musicians out there, I implore you, don't rely on your sound engineer to be don't say, we'll fix in post lah. Don't worry about it lah. Anyhow sing also, he can make it sound good. Let's try not to do that to our sound engineers, to our recording engineers. Let's try to give them honor as well. And let's tighten our communication, because at the end of the day, we're all in this together. At the end of the day, we want to serve one another. If recording together is a new process for all of you, the best first step that you all can take is to hold a giant Zoom meeting or Zoom call meeting, conference, whatever, video conference, WhatsApp call, whatever, and talk about goals. What do you want to achieve? Do you want to do a full band mix? Do you want to get the guy who can play MIDI keyboard to arrange certain things? Include people that you've never really considered before. Hey, I know this guy's son can play keyboard, or this guy's son is doing music arrangement at La Salle. Let's get him on board. This is the opportunity to serve together. This is the opportunity to worship together. At the end of the day, our goal is to help our congregations to worship. It is not to win Grammys, not to win Emmys with our audio and video, but it is to lift our King, to give our best to our King. And putting in our best for our King means that we put in the time and effort to help gel the mix together like this. Then let this be your act of worship too. And I hope that this inspires you to go back and see the creative potential that you have in your team. If your team can do full band, go do full band. If your team is SATV, sing to the glory of God. And hope and let's all flood social media. Let's all flood digital space in this era of COVID-19 with worship. And that's one of the amazing opportunities that God has given us to do.